Hello and welcome. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator and this is the Fenix Airbus A320. I fly the A320 for a living, and in this episode I would like to show you how to program the MCDU for takeoff, just like we do in the real world. Look at these guys talking about us. I bet they're making fun of us. Actually very realistic. This is exactly what happens in the real world. You either have some kids waving at you or some guy with a beer can staring at you, almost shaking their head. Anyway, let's get started. Before we get started, just a quick explanation. This is not a full tutorial about how to program the MCDU. If you're here, I assume you already know how to do that. You've flown this aircraft many times and you've programmed the MCDU many times before. What I would like to do is point out the finer points, the more realistic things, the things that flight sim pilots probably never really think about. That's what we're gonna be covering here, just to add a bit of realism to your programming of the MCDU. The MCDU or MCDU is actually the main interface between the pilot and the aircraft, and it is an incredibly powerful tool that gives us a lot of possibilities and a lot of options to cover different scenarios. So what I would like to do today is to show you how we set up this MCDU at my company and a few personal preferences I do to make my flight even safer. So before we start, we usually click on the data page and make sure the database and everything is correct, the installed engine. So this is essentially telling us if the software of the MCDU is correct. At the bottom you see something called idle and performance. Now by default this is 0. On the real aircraft this is never 0. What that means is that as the aircraft flies along, maybe hits some hailstorms, gets hit by lightning, etc., etc., the performance factor gets worse and worse because all these kinks and dents cause a bit of turbulence and makes the aircraft less efficient. So when we get our flight plan, we actually have a performance number, and we need to cross-check that this is correct with this one. The performance number on the flight plan is master, and what you have here is slave. In other words, if the performance figure on the flight plan is different, you need to change this on this aircraft. And to do this, you need to type in the word ARM, and that will turn this blue, and with that you can change it to what you have on your flight plan. Next we come to the Init page. The Init page is where we initiate the flight. Today we are pretending that we'll be going from Paderborn in Germany to Switzerland, Zurich airport to be precise. In the real world this would all be loaded in automatically via ACAS, and then you get all the information, the whole flight plan, everything. We're not too bothered about this today. We're focusing on the safety aspect of all of this. You would put in the coast index, the cruising level, and the temperature at the cruising level, etc., etc. Once you've done all this, the next page is the flight plan page, and this is where it starts getting interesting. So today we'll be taking off from runway 24 and we'll be flying the GISTI 1 Whiskey departure. We'll insert this. Now, in aviation we always assume the worst case scenario. Whatever we do, we always have a plan B. We always think, what can we do if things go wrong? And this is no different. So what we would like to do is now set up a way to help us if we lose an engine on departure. If you look at Paderborn, you will see south of the airport there are some mountains. So we don't want to fly south, but that's exactly where the departure would take us, just over the mountains. And flying with one engine, that's not such a good idea. So depending on aircraft and company, there will be procedures that you have in your EFB that will tell you what to do in case of an engine failure. And for runway 24 in Paderborn, it says that we should be flying straight ahead 8 miles from the Paderborn VOR, and then we perform a right turn and fly to the Paderborn NDB, and that should keep us safe. So how can I set up the MCDU to help me to fly this scenario? What we can do is we press here next to the departure and go to fix info. And first thing I always do is put in the departure runway, and I create a straight line. So basically the runway heading or runway track 235 would be the one for Paderborn, and we create a radial. And what this does, it draws a straight line. You can see it here a little bit, the blue line, and that gives me already something to follow in case of an engine failure, and I know this is where I should be flying to follow the runway track. Next, we go to the next page. We said we need to fly to 8 miles from the VOR. So what we need to do is we put in PAD, which is the identifier for the VOR. Then you need to check the frequencies, because there are several VORs and NDBs with that name. I mean, this one is 1,700 miles away. This is obviously not what we want. If you look at this frequency, this is clearly an NDB, so we want the first one. So we select this, and we said we want to fly 8 miles away from this. So what I do, I create a circle 8 miles around that VOR. So as you can see now, if we change this, we now have a blue circle, and it tells me that we're going to be flying straight ahead until we hit this point, and then we're going to turn right, and then we're going to be flying to the Paderborn NDB. So I'll put that in as well, select the NDB, and now I have a reference and guidance to help me out. Obviously we'll do some more with that later on, but this is what we do on the fix page. Once the flight plan has been loaded, you need to check the distance down here, compare that to the distance on your OFB, make sure it's close enough. There'll always be a slight discrepancy, but it should be no more than plus minus 20 or 30 miles or so. Obviously, if the runway in the flight plan is different to the runway you have active, then the discrepancy can be quite a bit different, but that is something you need to discuss with your colleague and make part of your briefing. After the flight plan page, we go to the secondary page. We copy the active flight plan. So basically we now have 2 copies of the same flight plan. The secondary page, I've seen all kinds of usages. Just to give you a quick rundown, in my company, before takeoff, we actually put in the engine out procedure and the return landing. So if we take off, we lose an engine, we simply say activate secondary, and then we have a full guidance with the engine fail procedure and all the way back to the runway, including the ILS and everything. On arrival, it's pretty much up to you what you do. Very often, if we fly into an airport with 2 parallel runways, I will put the expected runway in the flight plan. So basically in Zurich, this would be, let's just say we'll be landing on runway 14. Just put that in. And on the secondary, if I'm not sure, if I go into the secondary flight plan, I would put in runway 16. And with that, what we're saying basically is that if ATC asks us, are you available to land on runway 16 instead of 14, the answer is yeah, no problem. And we can do that by simply activating the secondary flight plan. We are still on the ground, so what we want to do is prepare for it doesn't have to be an engine failure, by the way. This is to prepare for any scenario where we have to come back very quickly. We don't have much time, we don't want to fiddle around with the MCDU, maybe we're on fire, we just want to press one button and everything is there to help us to get back on the ground. That's the idea. So what we do is we click on any waypoint, it has to be a proper waypoint. We have this here saying new destination, and we're gonna change that back to Paderborn. We don't need this point here because we're just gonna fly straight ahead and come back. Runway 24 is in use, so this is basically like your normal flight plan. We're not gonna be flying any stars or anything if we have an emergency, so you don't need any of that. And now we have on the secondary flight plan, if you look, we take off from runway 24 and we will go straight to Ibeco, which is the ILS, and come in for an ILS on runway 24. And to help you even more, you can go to performance and go all the way to approach, and you can already input everything you have. So today's QNH is 1015, the temperature I think is 21, wind is 240 at 2, and the minimum for this runway is 880 feet barrel, of course. So with that pre-programmed, if we are on fire, all we have to do is activate secondary and we would have our return landing. However, as you probably remember, if we have an engine failure, they want us to fly a certain procedure, and we can even put that in here if we want to. This is not something you have to do, but especially at complicated airports like Innsbruck or Zurich, where the engine out departure is fairly complicated, I personally don't think it's a bad idea. So let's get rid of this. And in order to do this, we now need to create an artificial point. So we know that we are going to fly from the Paderborn VOR. The Paderborn VOR is located directly at the airport, so that's fine. We'll be flying a track of 235, and we want to fly 8 miles away. And by putting it like this with the dashes, if you click, it's gonna ask again, which Paderborn do you mean? We mean this one. You now have a point, PBD01. And if we look here in the secondary, it's a bit hard to see at the moment. Maybe if we go to plan, yeah, it's created a point here, and you can double check this. It's exactly on the extended center line, and it intersects with the 8-mile circle. So if you activate secondary, the aircraft would automatically fly to this point. Now next, we need to do a right turn and then return to the Paderborn NDB. However, they want us to do a right turn. If we would just put in the Paderborn NDB, there's a possibility that the aircraft might turn left because it's straight behind us, and if you're slightly, maybe your nose is slightly to the left because of the engine failure, it would initiate a left turn. We don't want that, so we need to tell the aircraft, please turn right. To do that, we take the point that we've just created, so PBD01, and we want to turn 90 degrees to the right from our departure. Our departure is 235 degrees plus 90 degrees, because plus is to the right, gives us 325, so our new heading is 325. And what I do is I just put in a 3-mile distance, and if you do this, this will create another point, and this point will be 3 miles to the right, and after that we can put in the Paderborn NDB, and that gives us the full engine out procedure. So if we lose an engine at V1, we could say activate secondary. Now there's some rules and regulations because I've created these points by myself. This is not an official routing, but for you in the sim, just activate the secondary flight plan and you can actually use nav to follow this. If we just double check this here, the white line is our secondary, and as you can see, we'll fly straight ahead to this point, we turn right and then turn back and fly back to the NDB, and this is exactly what we want. The idea is that whatever you can program in here, program it in, because the workload is going to be immense. So you want this tool to help you as much as you possibly can. Next, we're getting to the Radnav page. Now the Radnav page you would think is somewhat redundant on the Airbus. The Airbus automatically tunes in everything, it identifies everything. In day-to-day flying you will never ever use this page, but still we want to cover all bases, and we imagine now that we have a problem with our navigation. We take off and for whatever reason the autopilot is not able to fly the SID. So what can we do? Well, we look at the SID page, and essentially what it tells us is the SID tells us to fly to 4.9 miles off path and then perform a left turn. So just to cover this, to get us to this left turn, we select the VOR, and once again we want to fly straight ahead, so 2, 3, 5, and with that we are already safe because we know the first 5 miles we're gonna be flying straight ahead anyway, and we can set off a mayday, explain to ATC that we're unable to follow the SID and they can give us radar vectors, but it gives us a bit of breathing space. Now I personally would put part here as well because it's required for the arrival, and since we have an NDV that is used for the engine out, I would put that into the NDV as well. And now we have everything covered, and by switching on the needles on and off we can check if this is correct. So ADF1 part is correct, VOR part is correct, check the distance, does the needle make any sense, seems so, and the same on VOR1. And with that the Radnav page is set up to basically help you out in case something goes horribly wrong with the navigation system. The final page I want to talk about is a bit hidden, so you click on data, you go on the second page and you go to pilot routes. Let's just delete everything that's in there for now, and you're greeted with this page, and here you can actually save certain routes that have been programmed into the MCDU. I use this on every flight. Simply open up my flight. The reason why I use this to check against the OFP to see whether everything is correct is very simply because this will not give you every single point along the airway. It just gives you the main point. So you can see we are flying from Gisti via Yankee 13 to Alexo, and it skips all the points along the airway. So it's a much quicker way to actually see what's happening. What is not simulated here, unfortunately, is there should not be a direct between Karlsruhe and NATO, because I built in on purpose a disco, you see here, and we use this page to see if there are any discontinuities along the route. In the real aircraft this will be missing, and whenever you have something missing, that means there's something not right with the flight plan, and we would go here and we would see what's going on, and I would see that there is a disco between Karlsruhe and NATO, and I would simply get rid of it, obviously check beforehand that that's legitimate. So that's something that's missing here. I don't know whether that's just a different software to what we have in our company, but yeah. And the other thing is, final point, again this is nitpicking, but we want to be professionals. When you check this page, do not check it against your normal flight plan at the top of the OFB. You need to scroll down to where it says ATC flight plan. The reason is that the flight plan at the top of the page has the same source as this. They come from the same source, so you're actually not checking anything. But the ATC flight plan comes from somewhere else. So that's the best way to cross-check that this is correct, and basically is the same that ATC have in their system. And that's the correct way to check it. If you really want to be super realistic about this, then that's what you gotta do. Okay, and that brings us to the end of this video. Yeah, not the most exciting video you're gonna see on YouTube today, but I thought I would create something like this because of I'm someone who actually watches a lot of YouTubers flying these planes, and I'm sometimes amazed how in depth they go and how much knowledge Microsoft Flight Simulator pilots have. But sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of stuff missing, and I know a lot of this is not really relevant to flight sim, but if you really wanna get that extra edge and add that little bit more of realism, then these things might be useful for you. I know when I used to just fly flight sim and wasn't a real pilot yet, I always wondered, oh, I wonder how realistic this is. And this is what I'm aiming for. I want to help flight sim pilots to really understand what we do in the real world, and to make their flight simming as realistic as possible. I think I might make some more videos like this. We can talk about things like winter ops, maybe how to plan fuel correctly and all those things. Yeah, would be nice if you leave me a like. I'm hoping that maybe more and more people start watching these videos and find them helpful. And of course, if you have any ideas, any questions, or if you feel there's a topic you're not sure about, then please leave a comment and I will take it into account when planning future videos. Okay, I hope you found this useful and helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, all the best. Bye bye.